Good morning and welcome to the United Nations Foundation. Thank you. Good morning. I'll start over. Welcome to the United Nations Foundation. We're thrilled and honored to have you all with us on what is a very early morning here in DC. It's great to see the dedication of folks who are interested in this kind of conversation who are willing to join us this hour and excited to be here with a lot of smiling faces. This is MENA SocialGood, and we're just glad to be hosting. I want to give you just a little bit of background about the UN Foundation's role and participation in the SocialGood network, and then I'll turn it over to our panel here this morning. The SocialGood network is grown out of a program that we help run every year called the SocialGood Summit. It's in New York during the United Nations General Assembly Week. And what we have been able to do with a host of other partners, there are about 11 partners in this network who help host it. And we brought together a community around the world who is interested in how technology and social media can help drive social change. We are in the privileged position to have about 35 different connectors and advisors around the world who come from dozens of countries who help us really drive that community. They really are the heart and soul of bringing together thousands of folks around the world and in most countries around the world who are interested in these kinds of conversations. So this morning's discussion is part of that community. It's an example of the kind of discussions that we have. There will be people participating and watching via the live stream. And if you're interested in learning more about SocialGood and being part of this community, please just check out socialgood.org, where you can get involved there. And without further ado, I would love to turn it over to Sami, our moderator this morning, who will be driving our conversation, and her organization is a co-host this morning of this morning's event. Thank you, Sami.
Thank you very much, Gail. Can we start by you guys giving yourselves a round of applause for being here so early? We just need that to inspire ourselves. So my name is Kazemi, and it's an honor to be here with you guys this morning. I think this conversation is not only a very timely one, but it's one at the forefront of a lot of people's minds in light of all the challenges that are currently at the forefront of the media cycles and everybody's minds in the region. What we hope to do is to insert a narrative that's a positive and constructive narrative, really looking at the resources that young, amazing innovators in the region are doing to actually uplift the region. And the hopes of our connections and our work in the SocialGood community is to elevate those stories, to give them the media visibility that they very much deserve, and to really think about how we can create constructive counter-narratives utilizing the amazing work of young people in the region that are really doing things against all odds in systems that don't have ecosystems in those places. So my name is Hazami. As I mentioned, I am the founder and CEO of Al-Mubadarah, which is the host organization co-host of this panel and organizer of the MENA SocialGood Global Summit. And the summit is a global conversation that takes place digitally, looking at harnessing media, social media, and new medias in general to inspire collaboration, foster innovation, and build partnerships and networks that hope to build the fabric that will uplift the next generation of change agents in the region. We've hosted several different global events, and also Hazan Ismaili, who I'll introduce shortly, also are the founders and facilitators of the MENA SocialGood Hangout, which is an online Arabic monthly hangout series looking at delving into issues that have to do with kind of inspiring collaboration and various thinking around innovation. So I will actually hand it over to the panel to do a quick intro of yourself, where you're from, what you do, and the most inspiring thing that you can think of for the region.
Okay, welcome to you guys. Actually, my name is Hazan Khalid. I'm from Egypt. Usually I'm between Cairo and Dubai. What else? What I'm doing? I'm mainly software engineer, and what I'm doing for SocialGood, I'm running some activities and some initiatives that working on enable people to get a good job, train them, and get an internship to them, and so on.
Good morning. My name is Zuba Ansari. I'm from Jordan, and I'm an engineer by education. I earned a master's degree in engineering, but I'm passionate about social entrepreneurship. I'm a co-founder of Jordan's New Building Council and several other non-for-profits. I mentor, I coach, I train, I help young graduates figure out what are the needs in the market and how they can sell themselves to employers. I think the most inspiring thing for our region, I have this theory that women engineers in the region are going to shape the future in the MENA region. We have plenty of engineers, women in particular, and their employability is not that high now, so working on their skills, certification is going to be very promising for the region.
Good morning, my name is Adnan from Morocco. So I'm an engineer, I don't like English, I like math. And our journey started at 6 a.m., so we kind of had to wake up quite early. So what do? I like to challenge ideas and people and disrupt my daily job that I have on. As I run a number of organizations working on social innovation. So I run a student-led network to create social change, a part of a global nonprofit, and I also co-founded the Moroccan Center for Innovation, Social Entrepreneurship. We have an accelerated program for early-stage ideas, and we like to challenge anything that exists that makes a world a better place. My kind of passion and things for the future, I was doing a training in a village in Morocco a few years ago, and that training was attended by a number of teachers and very kind of old and people with suits and ties. I don't like suits and ties. And there were a number of children just playing outside. And I told them to join the training, and all the adults were like, "Oh, why bring these children? They're not going to understand." Long story short, I did the training. The most crazy, ambitious, realistic projects came from 9-year-olds who don't speak any language. They just started a project on a very simple thing. So this is the idea, enabling everyone and anyone to create his own opportunity. Thank you.
Stop that. I'm Ismail. I'm Algerian. I live in Berlin, Germany. I work and I'm the CEO of a financial technology startup called the Open Bank Project. That's what I do by day. I sell technology to banks. And I also moonlight at several social projects with the vision of an aim of helping social entrepreneurs solving society's most pressing problems across Germany and Algeria as well. One of the things that inspires me a lot is really this. So, like on the side, I also, as you were mentioning, with Hazm, I co-host this monthly hangout called MENA SocialGood hangout, and basically where we have people from across the region talking for like an hour and getting several dialects all together in some sort of milkshake and mix of all these dialects, and yet people get to understand each other and there is no sort of barriers, and actually at the end of it people sort of get that they have all the same challenges. That's super inspiring to me. So like seeing more of that would be great. Yeah.
And what he means by dialects, I was one of the first one, and my dialect is broken Arabic, and it was half English, half Arabic, so it's like Arabizi, as you can say. But I want to actually give it to Hazim, if you can also tell us what's inspiring things. You're inspiring.
Actually, as we was talking yesterday, I believe in the only thing can save our region actually that can fix our economics that work from home. So I believe that working from home, freelancers and anyone has his own laptop, his own computer and internet connection, he can sell a lot of things, he can sell services, he can sell products outside our region and because of borders and because of all the economic limitations. And I believe actually in India, what happened in India with software, they export a lot of software, and this is what I believe we can do in MENA, actually, and we can fix the economic issues.
So on that topic, I'll actually just pitch the first question towards you then and ask you, what is the overview currently from your perspective of entrepreneurship in the region?
Yeah, about entrepreneurship, actually, as an entrepreneur and someone involved in the ecosystem for a long time, I'm not going to talk about that started in late 19s or acquisitions that happened in early 2000, but let's talk about the last statistics we have. We have a lot of incubations, especially Texas labs started from Egypt and now it's open in Jeddah and Abu Dhabi, Saudi and Emirates, United Arab Emirates. Actually, it's a slight wide opening, but it's like Habib Haddad is one of the key persons in entrepreneurship in MENA. It's a factory of startups. It's exposed a lot of startups every 3 or 6 months. Now we have some startups from Flatix here in Silicon Valley. Some of them is already break even and they doing a lot of good things. We have a lot of other incubations and investors. Welcome Internet doing very, very good work actually. If you just acquired a Kuwaiti startup, Kuwaiti food ordering, Talawat.com, it's for $170 million. And also Souq.com, it's a highest valued www company in MENA. Now it's around $1 million. Also, Dubai it's a Dubai classified based and working all over the MENA region. Just actually acquired by OLX, the Indian company. We have a lot of actually good examples like that, especially in last region. Welcome Internet, as I mentioned, was doing very good work in MENA through their Internet MENA. It's their arm in MENA. And they're doing a lot of things in the Middle East, Egypt, also in Africa. And actually, results is very good now.
So Ismail, I'll go to you to ask, what are some of the biggest challenges for both the entrepreneurial ecosystem, but also for young startups and young entrepreneurs?
Interesting. I think, yeah, again, like going to my previous point, what is really remarkable is actually the challenges are pretty similar across the country. We had this discussion actually, spent lots of time talking about this yesterday. And I think what really comes frequently when we talk about this, like infrastructure is really one big challenge. Like we can't talk about particular internet startups and technology companies if you do not have the right technology infrastructure, if you do not process online payments and so on. So I think infrastructure in general is like a big challenge and overcoming that. I think another policy might also be like hindering the sort of these efforts and initiatives. Although people might find some workarounds, but the biggest challenge and barrier is really a mindset thing. It's this idea, and we were talking about that as well earlier. It's even the wording, the vocabulary is. So there is some sort of stigma in so entrepreneur in Arabic, there are 2 words for it, right? Like is muqawil or ra'id amal. Ra'id amal means business leaders. It's kind of cool, right? But the sort of the widespread word is muqawil, which is like contractor, which actually, yeah, exactly, in really stage. It actually has like some sort of stigma to it. So I think even in the wording, the sort of like, yeah, people, being an entrepreneur is not really a job, so why don't you just get a normal job and so on. So mindset is really, I think, the big barrier.
And it's very interesting because I think the language barriers and translation tend to be an issue across the board in the philanthropic space, and trying to kind of raise seed funding through kind of more charitable philanthropic models. It's extremely hard because the idea of philanthropy in and of itself translates into a charitable handout. So an innovator or entrepreneur would not be seen as an eligible kind of charitable recipient. So I think that that's something that's maybe changing also, that we are starting to identify and reach our own language and create our own terminology. Ruba, how do we create a culture? When we talk about the mindset, how do you create that culture of social impact and kind of socially conscious businesses and communities and entrepreneurs?
Well, okay. I think you gave me the most difficult question.
And how do you solve Middle East peace?
Everything's under control.
Except this one.
Well, I think the most important part of it is education. So if you spread the concepts of entrepreneurship, including risk-taking and accepting failure. So in our part of the world, if you fail when you're a kid, then you get destroyed. That's it. You cannot do anything more in your life. So changing this perception and embracing failure and using it as an opportunity essential courses for entrepreneurship, whether elective or obligatory. So education is important. The second thing is inspiration. If you don't show potential entrepreneurship, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? You cannot make them, cross that barrier of risk, fear. Not having a permanent job is not easy in our part of the world, especially with the parents and the parents-in-law. Everybody's pushing like, what should I tell people? What's your job? What's your profession? So you need to inspire them by entrepreneurs, not necessarily like iconic kind of entrepreneurs, but really people who are like me. In 5 years, in 10 years, I want to be like that person. So having successful people, role models from both genders, males and females, is very important in our part of the world. In addition to training, certification, and the enabling environment. I know we tend to blame government for not putting the right ecosystem to encourage entrepreneurship, but I think there's a lot that can be done through working on the linkages between educational institutions and the market. We have this big disconnect between both.
So, Adnan, how does technology play a role in bringing what Ruba said to life?
Well, I'm not a technology guy, so disclaimer.
I'm IT engineers.
Yeah, I don't like that. So I think that to pick up this technology and what Ruba was saying is that the challenge is that sometimes in these environments, for example, my own mother doesn't understand what I do for a living. And her dream, ideal answer is to understand what I do before she dies. And that what really happens is that sometimes the piggybagging on technology and infrastructure, technology can be a disruptive tool to give access to information. This is why language is very important. The Mashriq and the Maghreb are very different. North Africa is really different from the Levant and any other part of the what we call the Middle East, because the Middle East, nobody knows where does it go. So that it makes a very difficult kind of understanding of even the role of technology. But now, as technology and IT for good or entrepreneurship might somehow be buzzwords in North America or different parts of Sub-Saharan Africa, if you look to Francophone Africa, which is actually a very challenging environment. You can talk about things as simple as mobile payments, or things as simple as kind of mobile banking or health systems. So the role of technology here is, number one, is to kind of bridge that different gap that can exist, and at the same time creates new paths and new ways for individuals, random individuals, that can spread ideas, not only ideas as a propaganda ideas, but as something that can be a force of good and do something that creates a useful mindset. And this mindset, within the right environment, which starts with yourself, can really create something that has an impact. And technology sometimes is not a tool. For me, technology is a mindset that actually can use it to really drive something forward. And then, of course, at the end of the day, create more jobs, create more values, create more social justice, and then move towards more progress.
So they're all running for office.
Depending on which office.
Yes, the entrepreneurial one. I'm actually going to change this up a bit. I want to actually ask you, for aspiring entrepreneurs, what are the key pointers that you would give to an aspiring entrepreneur who comes to you randomly and says, I have a dream, how do I bring it to life?
I'm sure that case maybe in MENA is different than any place else. Yeah, we started not that early, we started from early 2000, but still we are late. Still we have we're talking now about that big issue, any entrepreneur facing that after he started, yeah, we have a lot of incubations, they can start, but the main challenge actually is seed fund or maybe angel investors, seed fund before we go to Series A or Series B. We have enough investors for Series A and Series B. We have enough incubators, but we don't have that in that gap in the middle. So maybe the problem actually, the main challenge in this phase. But also we have another challenge. We have the problem in ideation. We have a problem in that ideas. So for entrepreneurs, they should go for good ideas, not just copy and paste, because most of ideas now in the Middle East is copy and paste. So it's success outside, success in in US, it's in Europe, so let's copy it in our region. Not only for entrepreneurs, even social entrepreneurs. We just mentioned that in our hangout today. So we're looking actually for innovation, for more innovation. So we should go for more innovation to get more inspired and more detailed ideas can fix really our problems. And after that second thing is very important for entrepreneurs, that's setting. I know a lot of very, very, very good entrepreneurs, very good software engineers that say that they're building an amazing tech startups, amazing products, but without business partner. So some guy can sell this product. So some guys can get an investor for them. So they're doing very important, put it online, and nothing else with it. Where's the investor? It doesn't work like that. That's it. So build a team. If you don't have a team, don't start actually. Look for the team before look for that product, because the product or the idea can change many times. But the first important thing is a team. That's it.
That's great advice. Aruba, how is the women's kind of, I guess, growth? There's a lot of growth in the region at this point, looking at the entrepreneurial space in general, but also kind of empowering young girls and women, education on STEM, exchange programs in that space. I know you do a lot in that space also. Can you maybe give a quick overview and then also maybe some dreams that you have on more things that can be done to invest into growth in that space?
Thank you, Hatami. So this is the sample Jordanian woman. We're all successful engineers. So just to give you an indication, engineers in Jordan, we have the highest percentage per capita. We have 1 per 9, like 1 to 9 per capita engineers. So this is a high percentage, and women are like 25% of those. In some fields, in some specialties of engineering, they're like more than 50%. I'm a civil engineer when I was in school, a long time ago. It was more than 50% women in that year. So women are really an important ingredient, not only in the clean tech and the engineering area, but also in economic development. So I think the unemployment in the female level is much higher than the average unemployment rate in our region, in general, in MENA. And that's because there are things related, of course, to guys liking women a lot and hating women and all of these things. But there are issues related to how much women really strive to work and to prove themselves and to develop their skills and competencies. Therefore, I think now the next phase would be really focusing on certification for women. As you know, in our part of the region, there's a lot going on renewable energy right now, on energy efficiency, and there are a lot of international certifications that can be brought in, giving women the chance to be certified will enhance their employability and also will advance their career paths and empower them to take leadership positions. There are several exchange programs. Many of them are actually supported by the US government one way or the other, like the Girls in Tech. We just opened the chapter in Jordan. Another is the Women in Science and Technology. And I think exposing our females, our women, to women abroad and see how they're successful in their careers, whether they're researchers, scientists, or entrepreneurs, is really important. I think this has really contributed a lot. I had a life-changing experience. I'm an Eisenhower Fellow, and this is a very prestigious fellowship. I came to the States in 2012, but really it made me look at things in a different way compared to what we're used to do in Jordan. So I think now women are really taking the lead, especially in the clean technology sector, in the green sector, probably because women are like genuinely inclined to sustainability, and they raise their kids. If we educate women, we get a better generation, a more conscious and more aware generation. So there's a lot on women in science and technology. From an ICT point of view, we have several startups that are owned by women in Jordan and in the region, but also on the social entrepreneurship side, like most of the business associations related to energy, environment, and water are run and managed by women in Jordan, like IDAMA, the Green Building Council, several other NGOs. They're mostly run by women, and they're very successful, very passionate. They join their professional vision with their passion, so that makes it really very, very important and impressive.
I think one thing, and I'll definitely turn it over to you, Ismail, but I think one thing is also important to note, and I'm not going to use the stats, I don't know the exact stat exactly, but there are more registered women entrepreneurs in the Middle East and the GCC specifically than there are in Silicon Valley, right here in the US. So I think sometimes it's very important for us to question our own biases. Yeah, deserve applause. That deserves applause, absolutely. But I think these are all things that when we approach the region, we see programming that comes specifically out of Washington, as we're speaking to Washington now. It's important to also identify the trends in the region. They're actually doing amazing things like, empowering young girls and women to go into entrepreneurial ventures. And the fact that a lot of the guys and girls that are building amazing projects are doing so without infrastructure. I think that is amazingly important, and you guys are examples of that. You're people that didn't get churned through a system that was preset to help you succeed, and you're creating the incubators where they don't exist. You're creating the innovation, and Adnan is going to spend the rest of his life trying to convince his mom that he's doing something meaningful, and good luck.
It's actually not convincing, because the best way to sell something is when you see it. When you see something that exists, you don't need to do marketing to think about it. So it's important about it.
So maybe we're soon one of these days. But just to go back to your point, that I was absolutely blown away. Just to share a story and example, I was absolutely blown away. A few months ago, we did an interview with May, a female entrepreneur from Gaza. She was actually doing Uber in Gaza, basically, so the equivalent of Uber. So she went through a startup weekend and never heard of startups or entrepreneurship, nothing, exactly nothing. And then she went through that program in a weekend, went through the ideation and so on, and she got this idea with Uber in Gaza. And basically she has this mobile app, very successful, where you can order a taxi or ambulance or anything, and they have like sort of certified taxi drivers. So anytime you're in Gaza, you want to go somewhere, and you want to get a taxi, boom, you just click the button and that's it. So it's like amazing. And she's like 25 or something. Absolutely amazing.
We just asked that Gaza, it's Skyleaks, it's an incubation in Gaza founded by MENA SocialGood. We just asked for, we need two entrepreneurs or entrepreneur plus mentor to interview them, talk about entrepreneurship in Gaza. They bring us two girls, mentor and entrepreneur, and both of them, when you try to find a picture about Gaza Skyleaks, you can find most of the people in this place are girls. Most
amazing work they're doing, absolutely amazing.
And one thing that maybe maybe surprising, speaking up of what you're saying, that it's not about saying that everything is nice, everything is good. It's never black and white. And the challenges are more about how can somebody go about it and understand it differently in how to see opportunities. That everybody everywhere is an opportunity. The main difference is that if you live in an environment where there's a kind of conformity, that you have to do things this way, or if it's not this way, it's wrong. It means that there is for me, one of the biggest dangers is a pace-based culture, not a copy-paste. The pace-based culture comes from an idea that it's from a rule-based learning system, especially in North Africa, which is very different, where basically people are not taught to think, even. I'm being very bold here, that sometimes you just have to learn things and then go about and do it like this. So this means that you have some very smart and bright and whatever you can take them in any type of standards, but they cannot produce. They cannot produce something that they can produce. Is that they're kind of formatted in a way that there's something something in their brain says that no, you can't, because if you do this way, you're going to fail. And that this failure process is actually very important. That everybody now thinks that if I do this differently, it's not only I'm failing, but my family is failing, the image is failing, the neighbors are failing, and the whole kind of community. So that the biggest challenge to really support is that not only about infrastructure, but it's a very personal kind of shield. And this personal shield is really linked to access to knowledge, any type of knowledge. Language is also very important. Communities that are open to English are more open to innovation, more others are less. But there's kind of a high correlation between both of them. So I think that anybody who would, because people say, well, what do you want? You need money? No, it's not about money. Sometimes you just need to let things go, as simple as it is, and then leave it. I believe in social innovation, so I believe that things have to come from the people, by the people, with the people, even though it takes some time, maybe a lot of time, it has to come with some rhythm. If you try to push things forward in a very short time, it may blow in your face and explode. So that the key challenge is that to be able to understand, and this is where government is very important, because whether we like it or not, government is responsible for big policy. Government is very responsible for budget, taxpayer money, all this that you know very well in the US. That this culture is not understood properly elsewhere. It's like that the government is a research field, where technically the government is not. So knowing how to be accountable and how to ask is something very important that is unfortunately not really taught. Asking for something that is for you is sometimes you're ashamed to do. Just ask, and then it may not come the first time, but the second time or the third time it may come into the course.
I want to open it up also to hear from our audience so they can ask you guys questions. I just want to tie up, I think, with one point which is critical and oftentimes very overlooked in how we approach inspiring innovation and entrepreneurship in the region. It's the cultural aspects. It's the social and cultural aspects, building a fabric that really empowers young people, not only young people, older, mid-level career or later, but are really trying to create meaning and impact and find it really hard to find a network that enables them to do that. And you guys are doing that all in your personal lives extremely well. But I think that it's the one thing oftentimes it's a common missing link. And I say this from great, well-intentioned programs that I've been a part of or seen in the region that have all the tech trainings down to the T. But then in the question and answer time, this happens all the time when I travel and do talks in the region. People come up to me and it's never about anything dealing with resources or access. They know more than anybody I've met in the US because all they do is spend time online trying to find resources because they don't have any. They always ask about the personal things. How can I convince my mother that I'm actually, important, or doing something and not wasting my life, or how can I believe in myself, or how do I deal with failure? Because it's something that we're not socialized to think about. So I think my comment also to those of you in the audience who deal in the entrepreneurial space, also in an empowering region, is really think about utilizing role models. Like you guys all briefly touched on the idea of role models, because I think hearing raw, real failure stories are just as important as hearing success stories because we don't have access to that. We live in a Facebook culture where everything is perfect all the time, it's great, it's wonderful, but what they don't see as soon as you push update on that status, you're like, holy crap, my life sucks right now. But that's the real stuff that people need to see. And that's where the inspiration will start to translate into creating these empowered communities. But I wanted to toss it out for questions. I think we have a mic. Wonderful. We'll do boy, girl, boy. So if you could just introduce this gentleman. If you could just please introduce yourself, say where you're from.
I'm Kevin Morrow. I'm actually from out of Virginia, and I'm actually an entrepreneur myself. So I feel your pain. Absolutely. I'm wondering, as I'm hearing you talk about the cultural issues that you all have to struggle with, I'm wondering, what do you think might be the long-term impact kind of beyond the entrepreneur world in the Middle East and North Africa of all the changes in culture that the entrepreneur culture is bringing? I mean, what do you think might be the kind of the long-term big picture changes that the introduction of entrepreneur culture might bring?
Yeah, we all know that entrepreneurship is generate new opportunities, is generate new jobs and everything. That we all know. This is the impact in the long term, but it takes time. It should take time. It's an ecosystem, entrepreneurship ecosystem, and Silicon Valley. This is not just from a few years. It took a lot of years actually to know that what's entrepreneur and the ecosystem Muslim and a lot of investors, and everyone in this week now in Silicon Valley, even entrepreneur or investors, that's it. So it shouldn't take a lot of time actually in MENA. So we said it in the beginning. Yeah, this time we have a lot of foreign investors coming from Silicon Valley. Maybe 1 to 2 years, we get a lot of investors like Yahoo acquired Jordanian company Maktoub from maybe 5 or 6 years. It was a first step in Middle East from US. But now we have a lot of things like Rocket Internet doing a lot of work actually in MENA and Africa. We think this kind of bridges can accelerate the development of entrepreneurship ecosystem. The impact, we sure the impact is the regular impact that new jobs, new entrepreneurs, new businessmen, and so on.
Well, I'll answer very differently from what Hassan said. For me, the biggest impact is more independent. Because in many cultures, there is they have type of Anglo-Saxon culture, you have a sense of independence since you are kindergarten. So that if you have to rely on yourself, to do things on yourself, and really count on yourself. It's not that your family or your parents. So I think the biggest impact of the culture that this trend is going to create is a sense of ownership of your own life. And this is something that would really disrupt and transform the whole society. Because we have more people who rely on themselves, who count on themselves, and who depend less on others. And this will create a new type of social dynamics, even between individuals and between families.
Hi, my name is Saida and I'm a statistician. And my okay. First of all, I'm very bad with names, but for the Algerian gentleman, thank you very much for pointing out the language issue, which is a big issue because I think that's what I think is that Arabic is a revolution because to incorporate all what's coming now with these new technologies, etc., it's maybe creating some new wording rather than using just some kind of translation that is sometimes doesn't translate really. Now my question is for all of you. Are you collecting data to measure your impact and your success? Are you, how do you measure, or how do you think you can measure how well you're doing? Because maybe in your ways of doing things, you need to know where you are yourself as, is it clear?
I'll jump into this. My data assessment is very simple. I'm accountable to create X number of jobs per year. So actually my data is very simple. I have a dashboard, how many people I reached, how many jobs I created, how many people benefit from services. It's like a kind of really small cloud that says that people who have access to energy, people have access to education, and then there's a number of jobs that are sustainable, not only created. So this allows you to have evidence that things work, and also to leverage more advocacy and leverage more resources to be able to do this. This is my personal dashboard. I have 900 jobs to create in 3 years, so I can tell you if I've been able to do it or not.
Thank you for your question. When it comes to social innovation, social entrepreneurship, measuring progress is really more difficult because most of the issues that social entrepreneurs work on are not really tangible. If you want to improve the environment, if you want to advocate for changing a law, if you want to change the living standards of the community, the well-being, these are issues that are not going to happen in a year or 2 or 5. So you need to figure out ways and indicators that will actually help you measure that indirect impact. But definitely, even our government, even everybody now is going towards more accountability. Over the past few years, people started to really, demand that they know more about what's going on. They need more transparency. They want more access to information. But setting up, full information management systems is very expensive. It takes time and it needs a lot of tools. But if you speak about the entrepreneurship arena, I function to measure progress and to show impact.
I actually want to add that while we're passing the mic up here, I want to add just though I think you brought an amazingly important point, which is that social impact is extremely hard to measure, even right here in the States, where we're still contemplating how do you actually show impact. And I think that's a challenge that we must take very seriously, because dollars and investments and donations, oftentimes that are in the large numbers, require these types of metrics to be able to measure impact. And I think it's upon us to really create alternative systems to do that, which will require also getting a lot of people on board in a uniform way, which is going to take time. And I think it's something that needs to happen not only in the MENA region, but also abroad, as in here in the U.S. Sometimes I forget where I'm at.
Good morning. My name is Soren from Jordan. My question is, well, I've attempted to be a social entrepreneur. I've failed a couple times, but as you know, we need something together. But from my
We embrace your failure.
From my small experience with social entrepreneurship, I've seen that some companies try to focus on public-private partnerships, trying to get the arena or public sphere with the private sphere in order to have the most impact. So my question is, what do you think is the role of public-private partnerships in this whole thing, and should we put it on or not? And then also, my second question is, should we be looking for the outside? Because we're in Washington, D.C., or because we're in the UN Foundation right now, should we be focusing on international organizations trying to invest in us? Should they go and should we accept them? It's a very important issue.
Thank you so much, and congratulations on the failure. My personal experience say that you need to work with everybody. If you want to make impact, you cannot exclude anybody. And being inclusive is now key. It's at the heart, at the core of development. Even sustainable development goals, the new ones, it's all about equity, inclusiveness, and participation. So the private sector is important. The only problem with the private sector in our part of the world that they're still struggling with their role in advancing sustainable developments, not only from the environmental point of view, but I'm talking also about the engagement with the communities, giving back to the society, creating jobs, enhancing innovation, entrepreneurship. All of these things should be at the heart of their business strategy and their business plan. However, our businesses, I give an example in Jordan, 90% of our businesses are SMEs. They're even micro businesses, not even small. So when you demand things from the private sector, you need to understand where they come from, what are their values, what are the things, their interests. You need to do this matchmaking between the values of your social enterprise or innovation idea and what this private company is doing. However, we have a great example in Jordan, Fadi Mandour from RMX. He's an entrepreneur himself. He started the company, now it's one of the best logistic company, and now he established a fund. And the fund is actually funding social entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. So I think there are good examples, visionary leaders who we can really go to for advice and for support and so on. But on the other hand, we need to figure out ways on how we deal with the small companies, because this is our reality. We don't have many big companies like you guys do have here. No big industries, no big car manufacturing, So I know we have a couple of telecom companies that are really doing an amazing job, like Zain, Omnia. They did the plug and play in Silicon Valley and so on. But mostly our private sector needs to be educated, needs to be empowered to be able to give back to the society. When it comes to your personal development, whether as a personal, like as an individual, a social entrepreneur, or as an owner or founder of social enterprise, the international organizations have their own goals, yes, but usually these goals are they're becoming, they're extracted from the countries and the communities. So they're not trying to impose, they don't have hidden agendas, let's say, compared to a private firm that's really, manufacturing a certain product. So I really encourage you to get exposed, to understand the different resources that such organizations provide access to, and then based on that, you figure out what you want to do with those resources. So I highly encourage you. I personally benefited from a lot of trainings in my life outside Jordan that really enabled me to make a difference in Jordan. So it's how you use your resources.
I think one also very critical thing to say to that too is public-private partnerships are a must. I mean, the region has some of the highest unemployment rates in the world, and it also has one of the biggest youth bulges in the world, which, I mean, I think what we're talking about up here is really how do you transform that youth bulge into a youth opportunity. And it's there, it's huge, with tons of potential and capacity, but the reality is a lot of the challenges that Ismail also first spoke about was infrastructure. You can't open a bank account, you can't have a business. I mean, there are actually structural issues, startups, financial policies, social regulations that actually don't facilitate and enable that. So public-private partnerships are a must, and big corporations have the ability to leverage a lot of also political capacity in that space. And Ismail, if you want to add something to that, and then I'll go to the...
Well, yeah, no, just to illustrate this point, back when I was in Algeria, I had a startup there, and we were obliged to close because of infrastructure, because we had the money in our bank account, we needed to send the money outside, but we couldn't do it because the regulation doesn't allow you to do so. So we had worked around for a few times for a year and a half, but then we couldn't scale that, so we had actually closed. So it's actually effectively hindering entrepreneurship.
And one simple thing, I think that I work with tons of entrepreneurs. I see 100 projects a year, and one thing that you should really get is find opportunities everywhere. You should not say that this is not working. Of course, it depends on your agenda, like whatever your interests are. But do not say that, oh, I'm not working with the global international foundations, and I'm not looking. You have to really seek opportunities based on what you want. And there is a very dangerous issue that Ruba picked up very quickly. Is this, for those who don't know the region, we have a disease called the conspiracy theories. And this is very, very, really dangerous. Like you have tons of people who spend their days just like, oh, you've been to this organization with this type of people, so you have this type of agenda that nobody knows about it. And sometimes you really waste your time in silliness. That instead of really creating something positive, you spend your time defending. So my simple advice, if you want to do something, go and do it. If you want to have opportunities, go and find them, and don't put silos in your head. Whatever works, will work sometimes.
So we have, I know you all have lives to get back to. It's called jobs. People up here have created their own jobs, so you guys know what it takes to So I'll take the question as the last one. I apologize for those who didn't have a chance to ask questions, but the panel will be around. We hope to exchange information and follow the conversation.
Sorry to ruin the boy, girl, back and forth.
It's okay.
Name is Mike Waltz. I'm here in Washington, D.C. I do quite a bit of business in the region. And I just wanted your thoughts very quickly on the relationship of entrepreneurship and job creation and extremism. And where do you see that nexus coming together or not? And essentially where, in my observation, where entrepreneurs thrive, where foreign investment is coming in, where jobs are created, particularly led by women, extremism fails. And I've been pushing the notion here for years that, we need to get that in the United States national security community. We need to get this out of kind of the humanitarian feel-good realm and squarely into the national security realm, because it is in the national security interests of the United States to support entrepreneurship, and particularly girls' education and women's empowerment. And I just wanted your comments on kind of that notion of premise.
I've been involved personally in culture extremism, all these kind of fancy names and whatever you want to call them. And I think that sometimes many foreign ministries think about this issue as a social issue, and they think about it as in a political kind of terms, where at the deep down it's all about economic empowerment. If you do really positively, it's not only with foreign government, even in local governments, so that if you do create more wealth, and you do create more opportunities, we just had a discussion about it yesterday with the State Department. If you do create more opportunities, you create more options. When you create more options, you develop critical thinking. And when you develop critical thinking, there is a kind of a less percentage of kind of dividing to one side or another, because there are different types of extremisms. So if you do really leave these options and then create more growth, you're definitely creating more kind of sense of awareness and less kind of falling into one or another. So definitely yes, more jobs create more opportunities, more good jobs. Instead we talk about not only jobs, good jobs, because it's very good to be an outsourced company and then pay people like peanuts. But this is actually sometimes creating a reverse effect. Good jobs, valuable jobs, would create more change within small communities and thus would create more value for everyone.
Nothing to add actually for what Adnan said, but about support actually in the US, in Egypt, it was a project, a program from USAID. It's an entrepreneurship school that works there for around 3 years actually. Yes, it's stopped now and no more this program. I don't know what else they're doing for the next system, but this is what I exactly know, because they used to sponsor a lot of startup weekends. In some point of time, you can find 3 startup weekends in Egypt in same weekend. 3 startup weekends in 3 different cities. Also, some support from USAID itself as a sponsorship for startup weekend. The biggest startup weekend in Alexandria. It happens every year, and also some another support. But this is what I know, that USAID and entrepreneurship schools and all the program from USAID.
And I want to just give a sobering fact real quick, is that it's said that ISIS actually pays 3 times more than an average job of an Arab young person. The other sobering fact is you actually have more travel capacity regionally working with ISIS than you do with a passport globally. So I think if we're actually going to look at structural issues instead of sugarcoating them, we need to look at the fact that a lot of young people are seeing that as an opportunity, and we need to better understand that instead of just kind of plastering it as extremism. There's reason people are drawn, and we need to really try to understand those types of things in our work. I know Rubo wanted to add something, and I
just a quick comment. Maybe it helps if we visualize a MENA region without entrepreneurship and innovation, without jobs for all of these numbers of young people. What is going to happen? Definitely, they're going to go and empty that energy and anger somewhere else. So I think governments were a bit late realizing this fact. We're never proactive. We're always reactive. So I think now they're figuring out ways to really the crisis management kind of approach. But I believe they have to work faster and become more proactive because, Hazami said a very important fact. But also yesterday I've just learned that, ISIS tweet 90,000 tweets a day. Okay, how many tweets can we tweet? We need to tweet harder. So I think, yes, hashtag. So the messaging, the communication part of it is very important. I know we're doing a lot in empowering women and youth and finding, but the messaging, the communication, all of these things are very important elements, and that's why United Nations Foundation decided to establish this global network of plus SocialGood, and that's why in MENA we're trying to set up something every month just to enhance the communication. If you don't communicate the right messages, you're going to lose people, because if you don't touch the life of each person in the region, sometimes we just don't know. We're so ignorant about what's happening with our neighbor. Where did he get the money from? Or how did he start his own business? Why is she doing this farm and so on? So I think communication is very, very important.
Saeed, and then
that's good. Yeah, I think growth to offset extremism is very appealing and sexy idea. But I think it was highlighting what you were saying. It really needs to be good growth or happy growth, or so at which cost are we doing this, right? Growth at which cost, and so I think we should be really careful about that. So growth, but then what about the people? What about the planet? So maybe we're solving one problem and actually creating a lot more down the line. So I think we should really be careful about that.
Thank you, and I want to just acknowledge and recognize all of you for your own work and the amazing things you're doing in your communities. So. Where it's going. So back to you guys for being here at 7:30 in the morning.
Yes, thank you.
So thank you. And thank you to the UN Foundation for hosting us, and SocialGood team. And hopefully we'll be able to exchange information and stay in touch with everybody, and we'd love to hear from
Thank
you.
you for your moderation.
Thank you for having me.
Adnan.
How do you do the horrible thing of asking you something? You seem like you know what you're doing.
You know it.
You got it. We're taking a photo, thank you, with our lovely sign. Is it?
Try to get the sign in there.
Yes.
All right. I'm just gonna take a couple.
Thank you.
Should be good. Well done.
May I ask the two of you something? I really need to get your feedback, and I want to get you involved in something. Hello, stranger.
Hey, thanks, mate. Absolutely. Well done.
During the meeting, I was like, the stories are great, but they're not solving translating into jobs. And people don't get them real jobs.
Do you like individuals? So
I love next Friday. You mentioned that you do a bunch of different topics, and yeah, just on the website there's a bunch of different things we can talk about. It's really fun to keep
So we're working on not working on it now. And Abu Dhabi
So that's the objective with that. Yeah, and she says that even a $10,000 work business is meaningful. India, especially. Yes. And she says, so that's what Monkey she called democratic capitalism.
I'm sold.
I know you keep
In Seattle, they want this
business card actually, but this is my company business card. It's a notification for the platform
company. I'd love to connect you with her. She's much more friendly.
Say hi.
Hello. I'm like, I can't tell you something beautiful.
are insane. Lesser, but I'd say my strongest connections from Nairobi, Lagos, Johannesburg, Cape Town, and then pretty much all the major capitals. Senegal, yes, actually, though, like, Africa tends to be more vulnerable than the others. Usually they won't spend too much time expecting one country. There's others somewhere, like, ministerial conferences, and not saying, just a week ago in Addis, there was the ministerial conference. And then back in May was the ministerial conference of I was just about to explain that we're visionaries. We're a business development and investor relations